Hello, everyone, and welcome to the GTAA monthly webinar for tournament planners. We're so excited that you could join us. My name is Phil Immordino, and over 30 years, we've had the opportunity to work with thousands of tournament planners around the world. We understand their needs and their wants, and our mission is very simple: to help you produce and host the best events possible. You know, we're living in some crazy times, and but we still need to host events. We still need to do events, and we still need to raise some money. So our topic today is very timely. It's perfect, and we've brought on one of the experts in the industry. So if you like what you hear today, please let us know, and we'll include you in future webinars that we're going to be doing. So today's topic is virtual golf events. We brought in Tony Lodato from TDJ Golf, an expert in his field. He's going to share with us every step it takes to host a virtual golf outing or any type of a virtual event. So Tony, we're excited to have you. Welcome and take it away.
All right, great. Thanks a lot, Phil, and happy to be with everybody this morning. Needless to say, it's been an interesting year that we've all been operating under. When we think about 2020, we think about the challenges that we've all had. And when we really start to think about what has happened in the golf industry, but in particular with organizations that have been trying to put on events to raise funds, that is those are places where we really start to see the impact felt. It wasn't immediate, but we quickly started to see as businesses started to close, as funds started to dry up, there was a need to get new solutions into the marketplace. And actually, and I think we've seen this in the past too, there's nothing quite like adversity to create innovation. And that is really what we've seen here in the last year plus. We've seen a lot of different options for what has emerged for people to do things, to bring people together, but at the same time, trying to do so while we're all apart. It's a unique position that we're all in. But at the same time, I think something that both the golf industry and others have really embraced and are starting to get solutions into the marketplace that can really help people continue to raise those funds. Because when we really think about it, that's really what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to continue to raise funds for our causes, but do so in a way where we can do it safely, and we can do it in a way now, I think too, that can create some more engagement with our donors and with our golfers. So with that being said, one of the things when we look back to 2020, it was actually one of the most significant years for golf there has been. When you look at the number of rounds played in 2020, it was up 30% year over year from 29. And that's the largest increase in the amount of golf that's been played really since Tiger Woods came onto the scene back in the early and mid 90s, where the golf craze was on. And we're starting to see that again now. The ability of people to be outside, things that they can do as a family, so I think there's a great opportunity to work within the systems that we have at this point, be able to put on some great virtual golf events and get even more people engaged than we possibly had before. So the main things that we'll talk about today, I want to focus on a couple of key questions that when we've been working with our clients over the last year, these are the main things that we discuss to be able to put on a successful event. And so there's a lot of decision points that have to be reached around your goals and objectives of what someone's actually trying to do for their event. How and when do you pick to do an event? What types of virtual events? There's actually a lot of them out there at this point. So we'll start to go through that. One of the pieces we get to most frequently is actually around how do we charge? We're all used to doing the events that we've done in the past. How do we need to alter it now for a new virtual event? As a complement to other things that we have. I think most importantly, how do we start to market these events? it is different. Virtual events are different than in-person events, and just thinking about how we market them, how do we bring sponsors into the fold, because definitely that is something that we can do as well. And then on the prize front, sort of what do we do there? So one of the things I think for all of us to keep in mind, though, is that virtual events, do not need to be a replacement for in-person events. I think they're very complementary. And I think as we see going forward, the way that we can engage digitally is something that can help create a lot of good recurring revenue for folks over time. So please don't take this in any way as these are replacements for in-person events, because those are near and dear to all of our hearts and a great way to get people together. So, okay, so I think the very first place for us to start is on our goals and objectives. Here, I think it really starts to come down to thinking about, from a revenue point of view, what are we trying to do? Is this trying to be something where we're trying to, build a large revenue generator, or is it something where we're trying to attract new donors, engage our current base of people? And those are things that we can do in either a single event, or a lot of people now are starting to work on new recurring events. In discussions with a number of the charities that we work with, the holy grail for a lot of them, let's say, is the ability to get donors on a monthly giving type of program. And I think that's one of the ways that virtual events can be actually very effective. You can set up sort of a series of virtual events, and you gain access to that series of virtual events by agreeing to donate on a monthly basis to the organization. It could be small amounts, $10, $15, $20 a month, but at the same time, it's something that can create that very, very stable base of revenue coming in, and again, that continual engagement with people. When we think about the events, though, too, right? It's a single day event is going to have one point of contact and focused on one day. The recurring nature, again, from an engagement point of view, is something now that you can create throughout the year. So even further on, when we talk about the dates that we should start holding events, that's something to keep in mind too. Is is it a single event, or is it a recurring type of an event? And when we get into the different types of events, obviously that has some bearing on either a single day or a recurring event as well. So when we start thinking about dates, single day or multi-days, originally, when we all think of our normal in-person events, those are all contained on a single day. It's an awful lot of work. I put on golf tournaments for years myself. And again, it is, it's a single focus to get folks into one place on one single day and capture their attention for, 5-8 hours during that day. When we start to think about multiple day events now, which is something generally for in-person events is not something we would be able to do effectively. This is giving us now a very large opportunity to connect with people on a multiple day span. So a lot of the events that we put on run Thursday through Sunday. And we actually, see that there is a large engagement by the organizations each night of that event now too. So as the virtual event may be going on during the day, there's now an opportunity for outreach each of those evenings as well. So there's the contact within the event itself, and then there's recaps that can be sent out at night. Here's what's going on in the leaderboard, opportunities to do virtual auctions, virtual happy hours, sort of other things like that, where each night they're actually putting on a small virtual event sort of adjacent to the golf event as well. And when we see that, when we see those other events, it's actually a very good way for us to create that much deeper engagement. Excuse me, that much deeper engagement with folks. very rarely do we get an opportunity to hold the attention of people for a multiple day period. And so if you start thinking about now a series of recurring events that can happen now on multiple days as well, you're sort of exponentially growing the amount of outreach that you have to your donor base. So that's something I think to really keep in mind. And the other things that you can do on the evenings of these multiple day events as well. The single day events can be incredibly effective as well. I think with the single day events, it's really focusing in on what is the goal for that one day that you're trying to accomplish, and really trying to drive it home. So, I think some of the benefits, again, of the multiple day can be around having people who have more access to participate in whatever your event is on more days. So if we think about a typical single day event, maybe that was a golf tournament that would be held on Monday if we were thinking of our in-person events. If someone is not available that one day, the multiple day nature of having something that people can participate in is great. Gives them an additional opportunity, potentially can do some things over a weekend as well, where with some single day events, you do end up sort of limiting what people can do there. So when we start thinking about now the actual types of virtual events, and so this is, I think, where some of the details really come into play about, really what is a virtual event? How does it work? And it really does depend on specifically the type. So over the last year, I give the golf industry credit for being very creative of how they can deliver services in a way where people can continue to do some things that they need to. So we see everything from actually video game options. So, online video golf tournaments where people can play over time. Incredibly slick graphics, very engaging. Not everyone's necessarily a video game player, but something that can be really fun. One of the things I think to consider when you're just even thinking about sort of the type of virtual event is kind of who's your audience that you're looking at, right? If you're looking to grow sort of the younger generation of donor into your organizations, video game option might be great. They've been playing video games for years. Could be a fantastic option for them. Then we start thinking about options that are more centered around some combination of live golf. And so I'll sort of start with the golf entertainment center. So this could be, your Top Golf, your Drive Shacks. These are popping up everywhere, attracting a ton of new golfers into the game. So many people being attractive to going to facilities like this, and actually then we can see through a lot of the studies out, in particular from the National Golf Foundation, the number of people who sort of start their golf journeys at facilities like this, very quickly then want to go play on an actual course as well. And so these are very entertaining ways. In some locations, this is something that is available. In some locations, sort of depending on what the current COVID protocols are, maybe not available. But it is a way to get people together. It's not necessarily on the golf course, but a way to be able to get people together at some of those facilities as well. They do offer some food options. It feels more like an in-person event, but there is some sort of natural separation at the facility in the way that they handle things. Then we start to get even further to sort of, I'll call it traditional golf, where people are actually going out and playing a traditional round of golf. And then, either doing that just virtually in the sense of go play golf and then putting their score and having that come through an online leaderboard. So there's a number of different platforms that allow that to happen. for a golf tournament, it's nice. It sort of opens up geographically where you can have people playing from. There's really no limitations to where people need to be to play, because now they're just going to go play a golf course on their own and record their score. So again, a way for people to compete together in sort of a traditional golf setting. So then we start thinking about, all the way to the other end of the spectrum too, on fantasy golf. So along the video game options, if you go to a pure fantasy golf point of view, so, through a DraftKings, FanDuel, that's one of the elements that we have at TDJ Golf here as well. That actually now can open up to a new group of people altogether, because you don't necessarily have to be a golfer. Fun, you can sort of follow along with what's going on the PGA Tour, sort of pick your fantasy team, play against others on that. Great way to raise funds. And the pro-am nature of it, that's actually what we do here at TDJ Golf. I'll get into a little bit of that later, but the idea, it's actually starting to put together some of the on-course play that we talked about, and some of the online leaderboard type function with fantasy golf as well. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But again, there is a lot of different options of what a virtual event can be. And like I said early on, thinking about the group that you have is probably one of the most key facets in thinking about, what type of event you want to have. If you have an older donor base who, really likes their traditional golf, the video game option might not be best for them, and something like an online leaderboard or a pro-am could actually be the best thing there. So again, just a lot of thought of your specific group, what it looks like, and are you trying to get to a new group of people or not? That's a lot of what we see now too, is that if we're thinking more along the lines of sort of a new digital engagement to build new revenue streams, that's where I think we can start thinking. You can really start to look at some of the new options that are out there and trying to create potentially a new audience for your organization as well. One of the biggest questions we get all the time is actually around how much should we charge for an event? A lot of us are very used to our in-person events. We know how to price those. It actually costs a lot of money to put on an in-person event. And with a lot of the virtual events, it's very different. And so the cost structure and the way that we put together entry fees actually should look a lot different too. And so, we actually work with people on a bottom-up approach. We think about how much do we want to make per player for the organization and sort of start from there, building up from that piece. So let's say if you wanted to make $20 per player who is going to be there, then we start to add on from that, fees to host the event, what are we doing for prizes, and really starting to incrementally go from there. I think it goes back to the point we were talking about earlier, though, around the audience and knowing your audience and knowing what price point will work for your audience. We've seen entry fees for some of our virtual events anywhere from $25 to $175. And the $175, it was that high because they're going after a group of people who are they're more high-end donors, but at the same point, we're giving away very large prizes. They actually hosted a virtual event alongside the Masters last year, where the winner was going to win a trip to the 2021 Masters. And so you can demand charging a much higher entry point if you're, for a prize of that magnitude. I think the key thing to think about when you think about entry fees, though, is how do I get the most people to the event and charge the maximum amount for that, and finding sort of that sweet spot of where that is. You could make a lot per person, but you may not get many people to go. Or you could make it so cheap that people almost don't value what it is that you're doing. And so finding that right price point is actually really important to, for the overall economics of what you're trying to do and the money that you're trying to raise. It's an interesting exercise to go through. And again, it comes back to that who's your audience, who you're trying to target. Okay. So now we're going to get on to marketing. And marketing actually is probably the most important piece of putting on a successful virtual golf event. It's a lot of us have marketed our traditional events over time. We know how to do that. Everybody's very good at it. They have their set group of people that they go to. There's some people in each year, there's a couple people out each year. It's a pretty stable group of people. When we start thinking about a virtual golf event, it's a little bit different. First, just the event itself is different. So there's some explanation that needs to go along with what is this event? What is a virtual golf event? That term, it's a pretty nebulous term when we say virtual golf event. So the explanation of exactly what people are doing, kind of, what they're signing up for is really important. And sort of the cadence of outreach as well. There's a lot more information that needs to be shared in putting on a virtual event. Again, just because they're uncertain of exactly what it is and knowing what they need to do potentially along the way. So, we try to think about sort of this cadence of outreach and how that works, all the way from a save the date. That could be 5 to 8 weeks ahead of the actual event to start to build awareness, like, hey, we're doing something this year. It's going to be great. You don't need to get into too many details of what it is at that point, but getting people sort of locked into the idea that you're going to be doing something, because with the environment that we're in now too, the assumption by most people that we've seen is they're actually assuming that things are not going to be held. So it's really important that we get in front and give people plenty of time and notice to know that, yes, we are going to be doing something. Here's what we're doing from, for a new series or a new event that we're doing this year for you. And so that save the date's a really important piece to get that first message out. Once that's out, then it's really starting on the registration push. In the past, again, we've had sort of our normal methods of how we would go about securing registrations and sort of going to our existing list, which I think is a great place to start. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the marketing channels. But how do we promote the event and how do we get people registered for it? Incredibly important piece. And again, there too, you can't just send out one email, one Facebook post. We actually had somebody who was running an event last year, and that's the way that they were handling it. They sent out one registration email and they did one Facebook post. Needless to say, wasn't very successful. The amount of outreach that you need to do, in particular for the registration drive, is sort of constant. We counsel people there should at least be sort of a weekly cadence of registration drive, both emails and through multiple channels of how you can reach people from that 5 to 8 week period, sort of leading up to the event. So now once we have some people registered, it really starts to come into, okay, we need to tell people what to do. They're registered, but again, it's something new to them. So we need to be very clear of what's going to happen. So in this post-registration period, sending them instructions for what they may need to do. If you're working with different app providers, getting them to go download apps, things like that. So how do you get that full level of communication and instruction out to them so they know what to expect? And that's really what we talk to people about, is setting the expectations with people so they know what's coming and when it's coming, and then when they need to take action. Then there's the pre-event piece. So, a couple of days before, this is really when you start to want to ramp up the excitement level for the event. A lot of social media, a lot of email push, potentially some information from sponsors. We'll talk about that later too. But really starting to build the excitement level for the event as it's coming in. And then there's the during event. So we talked about this earlier. If you have a multi-day event, there's a long period of quote unquote during the event now at this point. And so doing that sort of during the event What are we doing each night? What is that communication that's going out? Are we having keynote speakers? Are we doing other things to help keep that engagement level up throughout the entire event? And then on the backside of the event, how are we communicating the results? What happened? Congratulating the winners, thanking our sponsors, all those pieces. So when you think about it now, you've had, at least 6 different opportunities on multiple occasions to be reaching out to your donors and creating actually a ton of engagement with them. So the other piece to think about is just, what channels really are we trying to work through? For a lot of us who had done traditional events, we had a very sort of set way that we were handling how we would get people to the event, and it was pretty stable from year to year. Right now, it's how do we start to amplify the amount of people that we can get actually at the event, right? So there's a lot of different ways that we can start marketing a virtual event to existing golfers that we already have for our in-person events, to sort of expanding out on digital and social, creating Facebook events as part of it to go along, sort of encouraging people, in whatever virtual things they're doing. Are they posting pictures? Are they, finding ways to interact with each other through social media? We have our sort of traditional email methods that we can get in front of people. I think one of the most overlooked is probably texting. And I say that because, if we look at some of the open rates on some of these channels, if we look at digital and social, even if we have a pretty robust following on social media, a lot of organizations have thousands and thousands of followers. But any one given post, only goes to maybe 10 or 15% of an organization's followers. So if there's one post, one time, you're only going to hit a small fraction of the people you're really trying to get in front of. Email, same thing, right? We need to look at the open rates of what we're achieving, for an organization. A lot of open rates are in the, if you're lucky, the 30% range. So again, you're sort of missing 70% of your potential audience and being able to market it. Text, on the other hand, now not everyone has mobile numbers, but if you do, this is actually probably one of the most effective ways that you can get in front of people. Text open rates are above 95%. Great way to get in touch with people, share information, especially sort of quick hits, reminders, things like that. A lot of people too forget about sort of their local golf clubs and local media. A lot of them want to support organizations as much as they can. Local golf clubs can market to their own golfers, and local media loves doing stories and trying to help organizations raise money, especially if they're doing something new and different, and showing how they're evolving in these challenging times as well too. We sort of can't forget about snail mail as well. It is one of those things, has a great open rate, especially if it's a little postcard, something like that. Obviously, there's a cost to that, in comparison to some of the others, but definitely not something to overlook. I'm not saying everyone should do it, but it's a discussion that should probably be had so people can really, see if that's an option for them or not. But, the idea is don't necessarily pick one channel to go market through. You really need to market amongst as many channels as you can to really reach as many people as you can. I think we're reaching a lot of people in any one of the channels, when reality is we're actually just not. And so the multiple channel approach can help make it far more effective than just picking one. One of the other things too, when we start to think of marketing is sort of the add-on options. When we think of in-person events, we always have the add-on options of long drive contests and mulligans, and we're going to give short putts and things like that. And there's these add-on fees that go directly to the organization, and those are things that you can do in a virtual event as well. So if you're starting to think about, virtual events that have some on-course element to it, you can still give mulligans, you can still do the short putt pieces where people are inputting a score. That's something that you can do. And we've seen that people have had a lot of success in doing that. And so as part of their registration process, when they have that set up, making sure that you have options so people can select those. It's a great additional way to add incremental revenue. There's also some new things that we can do that are much more digital in nature around peer-to-peer fundraising. So by that, I mean, we're going to have people who are participating can go out and get sponsors of their own and raise money for the organization. So for an example, someone is going to go out and play a round of golf. They have, a number of their friends, families, others sort of sponsoring them to go play that round. They're gonna sponsor so much for every birdie they make or something like that. A great additional way to get funds into the organization like that. And also is sort of the text to donate. I think we've all seen sort of throughout time, a number of fundraisers that have been done online. Text donate to a certain number and you'll donate $10 to the cause. That's a great additional way to raise funds as well. It's super easy. The amount's usually small enough where people almost don't even think twice about it. But again, another great way to sort of have some add-ons there too. So when we think about registering, we're sort of in the digital world. How does all this work? Electronic. Making sure that we sort of stay in that realm is going to make everyone's life incredibly easy. There's plenty of electronic ticket sites now, that can go out. You can create an event there. They can sell tickets. They have their own payment portals, so you don't have to worry about sort of how do we collect funds. They can take care of all that for you. And at the same time, they can help structure communication through that as well. So a lot of them have platforms, that you can run sort of your virtual event through. Again, where they can handle the registration, the payment, and all of this communication. We got talking about sort of that cadence of communication. One of those, really important pieces is what happens right after someone registers. How do you take that information, capture it? Because now you have your group of people that you can really start communicating with. And what is that information you want to deliver to them immediately after they register? What action steps do you need them to do? At that point, again, it could be back to downloading an app. It could be reminding them of a date that they need to go do something. But that structured communication that can come through that is very important as well. Okay, so sponsors. I think a lot of people, the initial thought that a lot of people has is that they were going to lose their sponsors if they do some type of virtual event. And we actually think it works very well. Sponsors actually could have a far more significant presence in a virtual event than they may actually have in the events that they normally work with. Again, when you think about the amount of times you're getting in front of people, in all of the different channels, we can be highlighting sponsors along that way too. So definitely during the registration process, a place on the registration page where people can see all the sponsors, what they've done. Their logos can be there on the registration, but they should also be able to be on the virtual platforms or whatever it is that you have. They should be able to incorporate logos and messages in from your sponsors there. Sponsors can still bring in groups of players to play, and sort of buy virtual foursomes and things like that, and sponsor entry fees for people into the event. We think that's a great way for sponsors to get involved. During some of the evening pieces that we got talking about as well, a lot of people were giving, so let's say they were doing an online auction one night or something like that as well. Giving a few minutes of speaker time, in that virtual setting to some of the sponsors to talk about why the cause is so important to them. them sharing their stories of why they sponsor is actually incredibly valuable. And so there's plenty of opportunities, I think, in those, if you are doing a multi-day event, to get the sponsors some time in front of people as well. Very valuable for them and very valuable for them to talk about sort of your cause. Nobody better than talking about your cause than one of your sponsors and sort of why it's important to them. And the thing that we see probably most often is sort of a title sponsor for the event. It's the whatever virtual event sponsored by ABC company. That can be just sort of a direct title sponsorship, and a lot of them too are funding a prize pool. So we'll talk about prizes in a minute, but a lot of them, are funding that prize pool as well. So one of the things with virtual events, we talked about sort of the entry fees earlier and sponsors. One of the beautiful things of virtual events is it's very low sort of overhead cost for the most part in comparison to an in-person event. But most of the money that's brought in will be direct profit to the organization. So, from a sponsorship point of view, that money should flow directly in. The cost of the virtual platform is obviously still a cost to that. But you can create a very nice new revenue stream by doing, a series of virtual events throughout the year. The overhead cost is lower, but at the same time, the ability to put on a virtual event is, from a time and energy and effort point of view, is far lower. Again, a lot of us have run in-person events. They are a hard lift. They're phenomenal events, and we all love them. And so to add on, you couldn't necessarily add on 10 in-person events a year. From a planning point of view alone, it would be so challenging. But the idea of doing multiple virtual events in a year is something I think that people could do. Most of the heavy lifting is done by whoever the virtual platform is, and it's really just a marketing effort that falls back to the organization. So the clients that we've worked with, have been very happy in sort of their ability to execute it, even though that they have sort of a small staff, and that that we were doing a lot of the heavy lifting for them. So prizes. This is a big question that we get a lot too. A lot of times we'll have sponsors who donate prizes. That doesn't work great in a virtual environment, only because we want everything to be digital as much as we can. Electronic delivery is sort of king. So we see a lot of people doing merchandise gift cards, a lot. They could be Amazon gift cards to their, favorite local golf shops, things like that, that make the delivery super easy. And at the same time, it helps keep the cost down too, because now you're not shipping. So we actually don't see that people are doing a lot of swag bags or anything like that for this, right? Because they want to try to keep it all digital, keep that the logistics of shipping sort of out of play. Again, don't necessarily have everybody together just to be handing things out. So if you did want to do some of that, now it's turning it into a logistics shipping issue that you may want to stay away from. So there are prize fulfillment companies as well, where they do handle all of the aspects of shipping. So like if you did want to do some type of hard goods, there's plenty of organizations out there that can do prize fulfillment for you as well. So I ran through a lot there pretty quick. So let's see if there's any questions. Great time to throw some questions into the Q&A if you have them. I'm going to jump over and just talk about what we do here at TDJ just for a minute or two as some of the questions are coming in, and we'll go from there. So at TDJ Golf, we've been around for 3 or 4 years at this point. So we actually host fantasy pro-ams. It's sort of an interesting concept, sort of putting together fantasy golf that we talked about before, and this notion of on-course play. So we actually have golfers, they choose 3 PGA Tour pros from that week's PGA Tour event, and then actually go out and play golf on their own. So they're earning points for how they play when they go play golf. and they earn points for how their pros are doing on the PGA Tour. So sort of an interesting mix of what's going on with the PGA Tour and actually folks getting out on the course and playing themselves. So we manage all the scoring and the event all in real time. We actually have a fairly simple cost model for everybody who plays. It's $5. No upfront cost for the charity. We definitely want to do our part for organizations. We know this is a tough time. We think we have a technology platform that can help. So, we try to keep the cost down so that people are getting as much money back into their organizations as they can. Okay, so we got a couple questions coming in. So let's see. Okay, so the first question. My tournament is usually a best ball of teams. In a virtual tournament, is it usually individuals or can you do teams? And if you do teams, how is it done virtually? Great question, Joe. We actually get that question a lot. I think some of it depends on the platform that you're doing and sort of back to the types of events that you may be looking at. For our platform, we can actually do it both ways. We actually think about having people doing it individually is a slightly better option, only because you can potentially get more people involved. If they can't find partners, they can't find teammates, things like that. What we do though is encourage people, even if it is an individual event, go get your group of people that you would normally play with. Now you're just all playing sort of against each other instead of on the same team. But you can do best ball tournaments too. So I think anything that you're scoring, right? So let's even just take one of the online leaderboard types to keep it simple. There you could just have people who are inputting scores as a team versus doing it individually. You sort of pick a team captain, have that team captain, they're inputting the scores, and so everybody who's showing up on the leaderboard, that's just a team score versus an individual score. So I think there's ways around it, I think it's a great way to do it. I think if people can. Okay, we had another question about sort of actual virtual events that have been run. Do you have any recommendations where we could find some of these? Clearly, I think each of the platforms that are out there have some type of demo that they can share with people. We ran about 30 events last year, and we already have 30 or so planned for this year. More than happy for anybody on this call as well to spend some one-on-one time to talk through sort of any further details and sort of run through how an actual event happens. It's definitely a bit more complicated than an in-person event in the sense of there's technology at play now too, right? You're not just all together sitting there. So, usually there's a couple technology platforms. I will say though, that of all the events that I've seen that have been done, they've all been done great. I think all the platforms that are out there do a fabulous job. So I'd encourage people to go out and sort of, try out some of the pieces. We actually have, we run a weekly free play event at TDJ Golf each week. People can go sign up, play, see what it's like. We think it's a lot of fun. So, and I encourage everybody here to do that as well. Just got to go download the TDJ Golf app and look for the weekly free play. Okay, another question. Who are some of the trusted online registration and event website companies out there? One that collects player data, scoring, promotion. Actually, we were very happy. I think it was last week or the week before. There was a webinar that was done by the folks at GiveSmart. And actually, they were highlighting a company that we had done a tournament with last year for a children's foundation. And, their platform, they're a platform that hosts all kinds of virtual events. And they were able to integrate the TDJ Golf solution into what they were doing. Really nice. It was great to hear the positive feedback of both what folks thought of their platform, but also kind of how we fit into that too. So that's one in particular that I would say has actually been very, very, very well received by others. Here's another question. Can we personalize the event posting using our association name logo aside from who supplies the platform for the event? Yes, yeah. I would say everyone, for the most part, gives an opportunity to personalize the event, at least to some extent. I'm not going to say they're all exactly white labeled, where it looks like it's just you. But speaking for ourselves, we want the event to look and feel like it's your event, not one of our events, because that's whose event it really is. And so, right, we personalize images, the names of the contests, logos that we put on. It does actually take the look and feel of sort of your organization. And I would recommend too that I think when selecting a platform, I think that is a very important piece. Is that you're not just sort of on a platform as much as you're making it have the right experience for your own people. Here's another question. What's the best platform to use? Zoom, Instagram, or Facebook Live? Interesting. We've actually seen them all. I think some of it kind of depends on what you want to do and the platforms that you're most comfortable with. I think everyone at this point has used Zoom or some other type of software like Zoom. So I think that does make it actually relatively easy. They don't have to have the software. They can just go right in, sort of click a link, and they're into some event. Instagram, Facebook Live, great as well. I think that's a little better if it's just a streaming type of event. If you want some interaction, potentially the Zoom is better. We're actually on a Zoom webinar today, but if you were actually to do a Zoom meeting, you could actually create some interaction, get faces up on the screen, things like that. So yes, we've had a number of questions about the slides. We've been recording this event as well. So we'll have the whole event available with the recording. And at the same time, we'll definitely make slides available as well. So, okay. Any other questions? I think so far we've run through most of them. There was one other piece I actually just wanted to talk about quickly, which I think I failed to mention earlier on entries, entry fees, and sort of related to registration as well. When we think about, we want to encourage participation as much as we can. And so, a lot of it, how do we get families to play? How do we get friends and families to play? So we've seen actually a lot of people when they're creating their sort of entry fees, coming up with, here's the entry fee for a single person. If you wanted to buy a foursome, there's potentially a discount for that. If your whole family wants to play, there might be a family rate. If you're doing some things like maybe we do a TDJ or you do in some of the fantasy golf sites, there may be an opportunity for, as people are creating multiple entries into a contest, you start to discount those multiple entries. Again, it's how are you getting sort of the incremental revenue in for the people you already have engaged. We've seen people have a lot of success when they have sort of a model so that their entry fees take into account, when they have multiple people playing. We've seen in a lot of these events where whole families will go out and play, which we think is great. First, getting the whole family sort of engaged in doing something fantastic, and then getting a whole family engaged in something going on for a charitable organization where now, they can start to see the good things that people can do as well. I think is really important. So, all right, a couple more questions have come in. So what pricing have you seen for virtual events? Again, all over the place. A lot of it just depends on exactly what you're trying to do. But it's anywhere, I think, in that $20 $20 to sort of $100 range is typical for what we see. If you're looking back to some of the other sort of types of events, though, it may be a little bit different. So if we're talking about, something at a golf entertainment center where now, you're bringing food into play, you're potentially bringing, a cost for renting the space and things like that. Fees there probably need to go up a little bit higher than, what the pure video game option would be. Let's say that's probably the lowest is my guess. So, so how much have you seen raised for these virtual events? Again, great question. And I think, some of that some of that will depend on sponsors and what we think about sponsors and how that works. At least from my own personal experience, when I get thinking about an in-person event, most of the money that I made running my in-person events were always from sort of the sponsorships and sort of the add-on pieces that we talked about. So I see that it's the same thing for virtual events. Most of your money made will be made from the sponsors and from sort of the add-ons. I think the other piece here, though, is because the relative cost is lower in the virtual platform, I think there is an opportunity to make money on the actual event as well. And so that's why we sort of counsel people when they're setting their entry fees, actually starting with the amount that they want to make per person. So I think really you can start to dial that in to how much that you want to make. And, that's, I think, too, where, if you're thinking about sort of this new recurring digital outreach, this is something that becomes now an ongoing effort to bring in funds on a regular basis versus, a single event is probably just more of a single pop of revenue. So I think some of that too, you need to think about just how that would come to be. Okay, another question here. I'm part of a children's group and we're always looking for fun family events. Would this work well with mini golf? Absolutely. For the things that we do at TDJ, we have people that are doing all different kinds of things. For us, golf is golf, and they can do almost whatever they want to do with golf. We've had people do mini golf. We've had people do just almost, they set up a putting course that they did it with. They actually ran a scramble on a regular golf course. So we've seen all different things, but to us, golf is golf. We've even seen people go to sort of a golf simulator center and input scores from that too. So that's where I think a lot of the flexibility in these virtual events can come in is, working through, being able to talk to the organization, seeing what they can do, and can they accommodate what it is that you want to do. Our whole goal is just to get people doing some things and being able to support the organization. So definitely from our side, we're more than happy to work with sort of all different types of, I'll call it golf events. Sure. So can you talk us through the customer experience for your product? Sure. So the way it works actually for someone who's doing a TDJ event, we work with the organization to kind of work through some of the key questions we talked about today. We pick a date, and with that date for us, we actually pick a PGA Tour event to connect our events to, and so that's a key component to that. And then we work through, getting the information about you and your specifics, getting logos, assets, things like that, so that we can build out a specific contest for you within our app. Once that contest is built out, you would have people register on your end, that they pay for all the event through you. We don't want to get in the middle of the money ever. And so once someone is registered, we actually then provide you a code for the contest. You share that with your people. They can then go download the TDJ Golf app, put that code in, that unlocks the contest. And then they're kind of off to the races. At that point, coming up close on the event, people go out and draft their PGA Tour team. And then once the event actually kicks off, they go out and play golf and one of those days and put their score into the TDJ Golf app. So and really once the event starts, everything is contained within our app. So that's where people are going. They're looking at the leaderboard. They're having a lot of fun sort of watching their team go up and down the leaderboard as the pros are playing and as people are putting their own scores in as well. So it's a lot of fun. And then on the back side, we actually invoice just for the amount of people who played. So at least in our events, there's sort of no upfront costs and no way that you could lose money. You're only paying for the people that actually play. Here's another question. Are registrations usually made through sources like Eventbrite? Yes. Yes. Yeah, I would say that 99% of people are using some type of platform like Eventbrite, something like that, to do the registration. Some of them may have their own. That is not something we provide. And so, we want to make sure that people have the best event registration experience as possible. And so we definitely want to leave that to the folks that do that best. We handle golf well, and they handle registration well. So, okay, another question. Tony, what is your website? Well, great, thank you. It is www.tdjgolf.com. You can find a lot of information out there about how we operate. So, wow, we're almost right up on time. We have 3 minutes to go. Doesn't look like there's any other questions that are coming in. Phil, I'll throw it back to you. You have any sort of closing comments or anything like that? I think you're on mute, Phil. Phil, you're on mute. Let me unmute Phil.
There we go.
There you are.
Okay. Yeah,
Right.
You had to do something on your end.
I did.
All right. Tony, well, first of all, I just want to say thank you. Thank you. Very, very helpful. A lot of great information. I have feel like I now have a good handle on virtual events. And let's face it, here at the GTAA, our mission is to help all types of events and all types of fundraisers. So this is a great source. It is a great option. As you mentioned in the beginning, we still want to do outside events, obviously.
Yes.
So I think there's probably about 1 million more questions that people would love to talk with you online.
Yes.
Or on the phone, so via email. So please feel free to reach out to Tony. Gang, if you like what you heard today, we're going to be doing some great topics in the future. I want to hear from you. I want to hear what other topics you want to talk about, some of the needs that you have, because that's what we're about, is information and education. So our website is gtaaweb.org. Hopefully most of you know that and got my email, and feel free to reach out to me with ideas and questions, because that's what we want to do, is serve you and produce the best events possible. So Tony, thank you very, very much. Very professional, very productive, and very educational. So I appreciate your time. And I think that's a wrap, buddy. We're right on the hour.
Yep. Exactly. Again, Phil, thanks for having me. Absolute pleasure and honor to be here with everybody today. Great questions from the audience. You guys did great. And again, if anyone is interested in talking further, I'm more than happy to set up sort of one-on-one time to talk through any aspect of virtual events. In particular, things related to TDJ. So I encourage people to go out, check out our website, tdjgolf.com. And we'll go from there.
Super. Everybody, have a great season. Stay in touch. Let us know what you need.
Great. Thanks everybody.
Buddy. Okay. Bye.